All right, here's another one. We're going to calculate the second derivative of y for the function y equal to x times e to the x. So, first of all, we're calculating the second derivative. That means we need the first derivative. So let's calculate y prime. Okay, we need to calculate y prime. Now, as always, we first want to kind of just identify, do we have a product here? And we actually do. So when we look at this thing, I see an x term right here. I see an x term right here. And the tricky thing with multiplication is we don't normally write it out explicitly. So, but hidden right there in the middle, we're multiplying those two different x terms. So we have one x term right here. Here's our variable term. We have another variable term over here. And what's right there in the middle is some multiplication. So we actually do have a product here, product of two variable terms, a product of two functions. So product rule is needed. Now, unlike the other examples, we need to actually use product rule here because this is about as simple as we can get this function. We can't actually simplify the product any further. All right, so let's see how it's going to work. We want to calculate y prime. We know we're going to be using product rule. So let's implement it. Let's write down two copies of our product, x times e to the x, and then a second copy, x times e to the x. And we put a plus sign in the middle there. All right, so then in the first copy, we're going to apply the derivative to just the first function. And then in the second copy, we're going to apply the derivative to just the second function. And then we differentiate. So we need to actually finish differentiating here. So differentiate the term in the first bracket. So derivative of x is just 1. So I won't write the 1. And then the e to the x here is outside the brackets, so that just stays the same. And then we go on. So we have a plus sign. This x is outside the brackets, so it just stays the same. And then the derivative, we want to differentiate over here, the term inside the brackets. So what's the derivative of e to the x? Well, it's a nice one. It's its own derivative. So maybe if you don't remember it yet, still practicing, look it up. But the derivative of e to the x is just e to the x. And there we go. We have our first derivative. Now, for purposes of calculating the second derivative, that's really what we want here is the second derivative, y double prime. It might be easier to actually, simplify this out. So this is perfectly fine as a derivative. Perfectly fine to leave it like this. But sometimes it helps to actually simplify. And in this case, we can factor out an e to the x. We can actually factor this. So there's an e to the x right here. There's an e to the x right here. So we can actually factor out an e to the x. And what are the leftovers then? So from the first term, if we get rid of this e to the x, actually I probably should have left it there. There's going to be a hidden 1 that's going to be there. That's one of our leftovers. And then if I factor out an e to the x from the second piece, I'm going to have this x left over. So I'm going to have 1 plus x. So if we factor this, 1 plus x times e to the x. And the nice thing with these exponential functions, whenever you do a product rule like this with an exponential function, normally you can factor out that exponential function as a way to simplify it down. All right, so there's y prime. Okay, nice and simplified. Now we need y double prime. And so how do we find y double prime? Well, we're going to start now with y prime, and we're going to differentiate this. So for y double prime, this is where we're kind of focusing our attention now. And when we look at this thing, we see we're in the same situation, and I actually wrote it in. We have a product here of two variable terms. There's a variable term right in here, 1 plus x. There's a variable term right over here in our exponential function. And again, there's multiplication right in between the two. So this is now a product of two variable terms. So we need to do product rule again in order to differentiate. So we're going from y to y prime, and now we're going to y double prime. That's just the process. So we're starting with our original function, differentiating that once gave us y prime, and then differentiating y prime is giving us our second derivative, y double prime. Now we know that we need to use product rule. So let's implement the product rule. So let's write down two copies of our function, 1 plus x times e to the x, and then 1 plus x times e to the x, and we'll put a plus sign there in the middle. In the first copy, we apply the derivative to just the first function, and then in the second copy, we apply the derivative to just the second function. And then we keep differentiating. We keep going. So we need to differentiate the terms in the brackets here. Derivative of 1 plus x is just 1. And then the e to the x here is outside the brackets, so that just stays the same. Then we go on. The 1 plus x here is outside the brackets, so that just stays the same. And then the derivative of e to the x, that's a nice one. Derivative of e to the x is its own derivative. So it's just e to the x. All right, and there we go. A nice second derivative we just calculated. But for the practice, let's simplify this down, and we can do a same type of simplification. We can factor an e to the x out of each of these. So let's factor another e to the x out. And what are we going to have left over? Well, kind of just imagine just covering up. Cover up the e to the x's, and then look at what you have left over. So I have a 1 here, and then plus a 1 plus x. So I can add the two 1's together to get 2. So I'll have a 2 plus x. And there's our nice simplified second derivative. Yeah. All right. So that's good practice, kind of going through the product rule twice. In the next video, a little more practice. So a couple more functions, a little bit, some trig functions we'll see, just to kind of see how it works. Just it helps to practice these. The more you do them, the stronger you'll be. So just keep working on these, and it's going to come. All right, we'll see you there.